Welcome back. So, we've had a lot of fun talking about gamification. Last episode was about me being interviewed, not used to it, but
Not so fun.
hopefully now that's so fun. So that mean guest. I don't know. We have to talk about it later. But our goal is for you to understand all these concepts around gamification and how they can impact and will impact all the events in the future. I'm sure about that. And today we're gonna talk about a topic that is quite weird sometimes because we all need it, we all talk about it, but what is it? Where do we find it? How do we get more of it? And it's feedback. And feedback helps us grow as a business. I'm talking about business and how feedback means you do something that whoever your intention is to reach or message or whatever sends some information back to you, and then you act on that feedback, and that's how you improve. And that applies to everything in life, like behaviors. You put your hand in the stove, the feedback is you burn your hand, then you take it out, and then you don't touch it again. And that's how you learn. And in events, it is sometimes really hard to find feedback, to determine feedback loops and all these kind of things that you want to learn how people are having fun, how they're experiencing. And the traditional ways are like, yeah, let's make a survey, let's make something, let's send a form, and hopefully pray to God somebody will say something. And then what you have is either only the people who had the best time ever, or the people who were pissed are gonna respond back, because to be honest, you only respond or, oh, can you take a survey? It's either, yeah, you did great, or, oh, yes, I want to crush you because I had a terrible experience. So that's been a challenge in events. Always, sometimes it's expensive, sometimes it doesn't fit the thing. But gamification and games are all about it, feedback. So
That's right.
what do you think about that? How do you think, explain to us how feedback works, because I know it's more complex than we all think, and how do you think it can be applied to this?
Okay, so feedback is one of the big topics in gamification. Actually, before 2015, everything about gamification was about rewards, right? It was only until 2015 that it started to migrate around the concept of feedback. People talked about feedback, but feedback were like they touched this point like if it was a reward loop, right? So
Okay.
what will I get for doing certain behavior, right? So it was about getting something in exchange of doing some effort. That was like the first idea of feedback, and that became rewards and it's loyalty and all these things that, especially in marketing, the problem is that people are thinking about feedback in two ways. One is, how do I reward people for doing what I need, right? That's big in marketing. And the second is, how do I get information from people so I can use it to then go and reward people for doing things they want, right?
Or get better and improve and say, oh, this didn't work and this worked.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really interesting about feedback is that everyone knows that they want feedback, but no one knows how to give feedback, right? It's kind of a problem. And one of the basic mediums to understand how to give feedback is video games, right? Even more than board games. I love board games, but board games, the feedback elements of board games are too analog to understand the power of heavy feedback, right? So it's better to first focus on video games and understand what feedback is about, and understand how you can leverage it in other situations. Take it out and take it to an event and all these kinds of scenarios. So if you think about an event, you're building your event and you're creating content, right? And the kind of content you usually create is pushed content. In events, it's like watching Netflix, right? You're getting content and you're passive in the
Absorbing.
Yeah, you're absorbing. You're just absorbing. And the problem with this kind of designs is it depends on certain engagement principles that are not in your control. If you're making a movie, everything is in the control of the director of photography. The whole team is controlling how you engage your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're creating an event, most of the content is pushed by people that you do not control, like your keynote speaker. If you have a keynote speaker that's not great delivering content, you will have a lot of people just joining on the audience, right? Mm-hmm. And most of the time, you will try to get the best speakers possible, of course, right? And you will try to get the more engaging content possible. But this kind of formats are there about the delivery system of these formats are really stale, like the PowerPoint presentation. Yes, some people use the more TED Talk approach and everything, but you're not getting feedback, because to get feedback, the first thing you need to do is you need to be able to interact with the system. And these are usually passive systems by design, right? So you have some booths and you can go to the booth, and what will happen? You have someone at the other side of the booth selling you something, for example, right? And again, you're being pushed information. You are not doing something that will get you something in return. You're just approaching somewhere and getting a notification, right?
Yeah, and at some point, you're actually avoiding those people to stop getting so much meaningless information. Yet another one. Yeah, that's exhausting. I mean, you can only take a certain amount of information at the same time and retain it. After that, you're just disconnect your brain and say, yep, I'm just in autopilot, going back to charger.
And you're not seeking that information, right? So the information is, someone is trying to push it and you're trying to repel it, right? That becomes the game. That's a problem.
That becomes the obstacle course. How can I get to the other side of the room without anybody talking to me?
Yeah, I don't want more brochures. No, please.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna look at your business card. I promise I won't.
Yeah, so I need to create interactivity to get feedback going, right? So I need to be able to do something and expect something in return, because that's when this power really begins. And you can have passive media giving you feedback in a way. Think, this is weird, but think about the Cosmopolitan magazine giving you these solve these 10 questions and I will give you the answer of how solve your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a way of trying to give you feedback around something that you are interacting with. You're expecting information in return, right?
Yes, and let me just put a bracket into this because it's gonna go too far. I just want to say that I've been in both sides of the table, in a trade show, in an event, and it's equally painful to be behind the table, behind the counter, and see the guests just trying to avoid it, and you saying, "Yeah, I get you, buddy," because this is what I have, and even for agencies like your brand ambassadors and all the people like delivering your brand message, at the end disengage in this type of things, because it's a one-way conversation. Like, what do you have to sell? Yeah, this is it. It's super boring for both parties. It's not only the guests, it's everybody involved.
It's everybody. Everybody is just want to run away from the experience. So the first thing you need is interactivity, and that means creating call to actions, right? And there are not many call to actions in traditional events.
Nope.
Yeah, it's the call to action is go to the room and sit down and watch the thing and try to learn, right? And in the worst medium for learning possible, and we know that for a long time, right? Just hear the speaker talking, and let's hope you learn something and you're engaged. But when you start gamifying an event and you start thinking about how games produce feedback, you create call to actions, and then from those call to actions you create interfaces, and this is really important. The interface becomes the medium by which you get the feedback. And for many people, this means technology, right? So apps, right? So I need an app where there's the mission, and we created an app in this event, and it's fine. Of course, you can have an app and touch, and I got 2 points. And video games use that natural interface, the screen as an interface, and it works really well because the screen can capture a lot of information, a lot of emotion, and it's really powerful if done correctly. Usually those things are not done as well when you have low budgets. Feedback requires a lot of budget to make it emotional. Yeah, it's not just there's a coin and you have 3 coins. That's boring. You needed to give impact to that information, right? And that costs the animator, and that's a whole different deal. So what happens? Well, it's not only about technology. It's not only about the screens. An interface can be anything that can give you information if you do that call to action. So let's go back to board games now, because board games give you feedback not in the sense of those cues that you get in your video game, but give you feedback by dealing cards and getting the cards and seeing what you got, right? And then I play a card, and what did everyone else play? And I got feedback because I'm getting interaction from other people. And we're using components like dice, right? So I roll the dice, and I got a pair of sixes, right? So wow, I got it, and it's that's role-playing game for us, right? So I got a 20 and a D20. It's amazing, it's emotional, it was against the odds, but the system gave me the information that made me feel something because I was in part of the process that generated that information. I had to do something to get that information back, right? So if you think about what we did in this event, we first started working on our interface types, right? This means, for example, points, of course. Points are interface systems. And they are great for giving you feedback if you know how to use them. If they're just some number that you accrue by doing activities, but they're meaningless.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen the apathy and yeah, I got bite.
Yeah. Right? So you need to give those points some kind of meaning. And a point can be a token, can be any material thing that you might receive for doing stuff, right? So if you think about what we did in that event was creating mainly two types of feedback. I will talk, there are many types, but you can talk about two main types of feedback: progression feedback and completion feedback.
Okay.
Right? And they're really similar, but they're not the same. So if you have progression feedback, it's about understanding your future, right? As a player, what they're giving you is a possible future. And you know the roadmap to that future. And it gives you, okay, here is where you are, here's where you can be. That's why progress bars are so important, right? What is a progress bar? What is physics? Right? A progress bar can be a glass of water. A progress bar can be you have 5 chips in a bag and you take them one by one to the table, and when it's empty, now it's empty. That's a progression bar. It's a tree growing and sprouting flowers, right?
Yeah, and what you said about the impact and that, like you go to Vegas and you earn 25 cents and the machine just goes crazy. And it sounds like you cashed out $1 million and it's 25 cents and it's a voucher. Actually, and they kept the sound of the coins as part of their feedback system. So you go to Vegas, you play, and then you cash out. You don't have coins anymore. You just catch a voucher and then you go and change it. But you hear the sound of the coins, and then that's part of it, because people are used and relate that winning sensation with the coins flashing out of the machine.
Yeah, right. and so feedback has impact, that has emotion. So it's different if I say you won 5 points to say you won 5 points.
Yep.
Dun, 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 right? It has power, right?
Yeah.
It has emotion, and emotion brings attention, and attention drives motivation. That's the thing that you want to do. And when you have progression, what you want is to create progression systems that are not just merely progression bars. It's not just about drawing the progression. It's about creating emotion around that possible progression. So we have, for example, these sunstones, and we said people would be able to level up to level 5, right? And I get one sunstone, and I know I can get to level 5, but I know there are 5 levels, and each level means I'm leveling up. I'm not sure what does this mean until I start leveling up, but maybe leveling up unlocks other content, right?
Yeah, and for some people, they approach the booth and then they didn't know what's going on. Okay, no, you get to chance to level up, and then they got a sunstone, and then the moment they put it in the password, then they say, "Oh,
1 of 5."
yeah, exactly." And somehow it's like they say being naked with socks feels more naked than just being naked. It was like their password felt more empty with one sticker than with no stickers. Because
That's right.
With no stickers, they're like, yeah, okay. But now that they have one, they felt like this feeling of something's missing. I need to complete this. And that actually happened. A lot of players, they just went to that point. I just need to complete this bar. And then some of them, they just went berserk. And we talked about this overachiever players and some glitches in the game and stuff like that. And they went like filling out their things. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you don't need everyone to complete things. That's where completion feedback comes around. But first, you need people to feel like there's a possibility of progression. Not that you are progressing, that there is a road for progression. You need to show that road of progression to the players. So you have these blank pages, and you place one sticker, and it can be 1 sticker or it can be 20 stickers, but you feel this sense of progression, and you know there's a roadmap. And there are not one progression system. In games, you have multiple progression systems.
Yeah.
multiple progression loops. So I can gather the collectible stickers, but I can get the sunstones, but I can fill up this big Coke container with, right? So usually designers, when they don't know about games, they try to have one progression system, and one progression system gives you only one path to victory. But when you have multiple progression systems, you start deciding which matter to you, right? So that's really important to be able, and even, for example, the narrative of the game, the idea that we created chapters, remember?
Mm-hmm.
So you have an event, let's place chapters, right? 4 chapters in the event, and you're now in chapter 1. Now you're in chapter 2. Those are progression systems of feedback. But then you have your completion systems that intertwine really well with some of the progression systems. So completion, getting to the end of the chapters is something that will happen in the game. But getting all the 5 sunstones or filling all your page is not something that needs to happen. It's something that I need you to want to happen.
Yeah, and I thought you mentioned that there were different progression systems across the game, and for different goals. Even the boards that we had with the completed missions, just like I already finished. Okay, let's paste it in this board. Somehow the different orders started looking at each other and saying, "Hey, we need to complete more missions so our board looks." Even though it had zero meaning in the game or whatsoever, the battles were the collective, in which, for example, those players who weren't like, at some point you start seeing, okay, these guys are going for the collect as many individual stickers as possible. Let's focus on the team efforts and let's make our battle the biggest one and all that. So they switched from individual goals because they forfeited from the individual race and say, okay, let's do team effort and try to beat them, even though those are individual champions. That might be the best team. And
right,
that happened. And some of those we didn't even expect, like the boards, like, oh, people are caring about that. Huh? Who would think?
And that's one of the things that's interesting about gamification, that people, when they haven't worked in gamification, think, oh, that's a gimmick. Let's have a cork board where you can place the missions. Yeah, it's nice, it's interesting, but you don't realize until you see it how people can get invested on seeing how that board gets completed, right? So that's where completion mechanics start working out. It's the idea that you can have a progress element, and some progress elements are endless. In many games, you have infinite levels, but you are progressing, and you're in level 155, and then 260, but you're never ending. But when you know that you can end something, and that there's a completion aspect of the mechanic, and you know you completed because you have all the 5 stickers, and you know when that happens, that creates a sense of purpose. That creates an objective, an untold objective. You don't have to say that to the people. You need to find all the stickers. They will see it and they will want it, right? And the thing is, we created these kinds of feedback elements in, again, several levels. So the factions or the orders would have these big containers where they would have collective feedback elements, where as myself, I cannot place so many tokens there that it will create impact in the visual interface. But if I place some tokens, I go away and then I come back and I see it right, it has risen, right?
Yeah.
It becomes emotional again because, okay, this is a team effort. We're doing it.
We motivates you to engage for, okay, that's awesome. And I think it was a big thing that we used this system to get pre, during, and post event feedback. And talking about from the agency perspective now a little bit, it was very important because we were able through the digital platform and stuff and the onboarding process, we were already seeing a lot of engagement before the actual event because we set up something, and that's part of the game design. There's stuff happening during, but there's stuff happening before and after. And in the before part, we already were expecting, we weren't expecting this many people engaged in this part of the game. That's interesting. So that gave us a little bit of hope. Again, didn't prepare us for all the madness that went out there and how engaged they were, but at least it should have warned us a little bit. And And yet those feedback things, we're not used to get them, and they became like proof for the for what happened. And this takes me to the next level, and this is something I know we've discussed in the future we need to start implementing. But I used to work, I had an experience working with CDP, a customer data platform, and they were all about data-driven decisions and all that. And how many more data points we created in this event? Like, instead of just measuring, of course, we loved and we appreciate it. And thank you, Ken, if you're watching this and you were one of those who provided amazing feedback. Thank you, because it was fantastic to hear from so many of you. This was the best event I've been to. Those are declared like qualitative statements. Like, yeah, you guys were the best. This was so much fun. I wish we could have played more. But if we can start measuring, oh my God, we thought we were going to give away 500 cards and we gave away 2,000 cards. That's feedback. That's information we got. And that's something tangible we can tell the client and say, you know what? We had a lot of interaction, because think about how much time would them take to do this. In average, every person spend X amount of minutes playing the game. That's something that's very valuable for a company and for a marketing agency, and something that you can tell your client, damn, you know what? We're going to make sure and we can prove it that we actually delivered this. In the gamification engine, there's a lot of information of how many people scanned the QR codes, they went for treasure hunts, all these things. And that's actually data that's going to tell clients, tell agencies, a lot of people, all the stakeholders are going to get a lot of more information on how the actual event went versus we had the presence there. I was devastated in one of the trade shows I was recently. A huge company, I'm not going to say the name, huge, like top 100 in the world. And they had the lamest stand ever. Oh, so much that as a marketing agency, we approached them and like, hey, what are you guys doing here? Like, this is the budget we allocate for this. We don't give any value to this event. So we don't even try. Like, we don't care. That's sad, because it can be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of things. So I don't know. How do you envision that future of how feedback can improve future events for everyone? Because we all want better events, not just the ones we work at, but the ones we attend. I crave for. I'm gonna be crying happy tears the day I show up to event and they show me that they have gamified it, and it's like, yes, this is gonna be way more fun.
Yeah. And I think to envision this future, we need to break a barrier.
Okay.
So what's the barrier with good feedback? Is that every feedback element you creates an opportunity for engagement, right?
Okay.
You want to create more opportunities of engagement. That means you need more feedback systems. That's what video games do. They give you feedback for everything. And that means that a normal video or board game has multiple resources, multiple tracking points, multiple things that you can actually see how they evolve in the game, right? But what happens? Each time you create these feedback elements, you create complexity. And that complexity is absorbed mainly by the client or the organizer, right? The organizer needs to know how everything works, and that will always scare the people that's organizing the event.
Yeah.
So you might, if you create more feedback elements, it will create more impact, but it will feel more complex. So the agency itself might say,
testify.
Yeah, the agency might say people will not understand. For example, we understand feedback elements like this. Our brain is hardwired to understand them, and we get them so fast. But we think that we need to know and understand the rules. We feel it overwhelming. So to create a future on gamified events, the first barrier that we need to pass is to make the agency and the clients fear less the complexity of these feedback systems. They will create complexity, but you need to be able to have courage, because if you have that kind of courage and you start creating this in your events, the impact will be amazing. If you start simplifying, you will simplify also the emotional value. And that's the hard part. So the future of gamified events depends on people breaking that barrier.
there you have it. And I think I repeated this phrase a lot, previous, during, and post event. I kept telling the clients and everybody, if I try to explain to you how to play Uno on an email, you're gonna see it like a physics paper. And in reality, the second you start drawing the cards, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly what a lot of the clients were like, oh my God, this was a lot more easy to understand, not simple, easy to understand and fun that we expected. We were imagining something super complex. And yeah, so let's break that barrier. Let's trust designers. It's not a coincidence that game design, like video game industry, is bigger than music, cinema combined. It's because something we embrace as a culture. Generation Z is all about that kind of thing, and they demand. They don't expect. They demand feedback. So let's go for it. Thank you so much for being with us, and see you in the next one.